Thank you for tuning in to Entertain the Geeky, your source for nerd news.
Hey guys, what's up? This is Jason back at you with more nerd news, bringing you the top stories of the week from the worlds of video games, comic books, film, and television. So we're going to start with comic books today. It looks like we can put some rumors to bed about what's been going on, or how long it's been, or whether or not the company was going to bring this back or not, because Marvel has announced this week that they are bringing back Fantastic Four. They're going to have their own team book, not just be a part of other people's books, which is what Thing and Human Torch have been as of late. They've just been kind of popping up. They're in Marvel 2-in-1, popping up in Guardians of the Galaxy and books like that. So, again, it looks like we're going to have a Fantastic Four team book again. We were wondering what Dan Slott was going to be getting up to once he was done with his run on Spider-Man, which ends in just a few issues. So it looks like he's going to be writing the book and coming on board from another Spider-Man title, just Spider-Man, the Miles Morales book. Artist Sarah Pichelli is going to be joining him. So this is a huge announcement, because there was long, these thoughts that Marvel Comics was intentionally not putting a lot of effort into comic properties whose movie rights were owned by other companies, like 20th Century Fox owning Fantastic Four, and X-Men, and Sony owning Spider-Man. Now, that, I think, is something that we can put to bed at this point, because they've definitely put focus back into the X-Men books with a multitude of titles across their entire line that have really been focused on the X-Men. 3 team books, the X-Men Blue, X-Men Gold, and now X-Men Red, which just got added in the aftermath of Phoenix Resurrection, the return of Jean Grey. So it looks like those kinds of ideas are actually not entirely true. I think Marvel was just kind of waiting for the right time to bring Fantastic Four back into the fold. Reed and Sue, in the aftermath of Secret Wars, have kind of been off in the universe somewhere with their children. And like I talked about earlier, Ben and Johnny have kind of been popping up in team books, and they have been, starring in the new revived Marvel 2-in-1. But so it'll be interesting to see what Slott and Pichelli will do with these characters. There's a little bit of teaser art. You can check that out at entertainthegeeky.com. There was a little blurb that we put up about this whole thing, and the teaser art from Sarah Pichelli is there, which also has the date of August of this year. On the DC side of things, a couple of things. So Dark Knight's Metal is over. Keep tuned to entertainthegeeky.com. We'll be putting up the final part of my Dark Knight's Metal review that will go over issues 1 through 6, just kind of the main series, and there's a few remaining one-shots that had not been part of the other 2 reviews that we did. So we'll be putting that up sometime this week. But in the aftermath of it, we have what is being called Justice League No Justice, which is a 4-part weekly series that starts in May. Creative team behind that is James Tynion, who's been working on Detective Comics, Joshua Williamson, who's been working on Flash, and Francis Manapul doing art. And we recently, with the aftermath of Dark Knight's Metal kind of changing pretty much everything about the DC universe at this point, the breach in the source wall, it looks like, will take center stage for this Justice League No Justice crossover that they're doing. So other people are going to be getting involved. There's word that Brainiac is going to be a part of it, which is going to be cool to see Brainiac part of a rebirth story, But the breach in the source wall will be the focal point of it, and that will lead into, what we talked about last week with the Justice League relaunched books, Justice League, A New Justice League Dark, and Justice League Odyssey, which is kind of going to be a spacefaring book. Excuse me. So yeah, it looks like, Metal, more so than just being the end of Snyder and Capullo's Batman arc coming from New 52 all the way to right here with the finale of Dark Knight's Metal that came out last week. So far from being that, it is something that is going to change the DC universe forever. I mean, we've already seen some of the New Age of Heroes books starting, which is interesting because they've, the timing was off. Dark Knight's Metal was supposed to be finished up months ago, so that we would have had these New Age of Heroes books kind of being born out of it. But it is enough to know that that's where that all comes from. It all comes together really nicely in the final part of the main series. So it looks like I said, it's going to be influencing the DC universe pretty hardcore from here on out. Keeping with Batman for a little while here, over in his book, it looks like, we've talked about this, we've reported on it. The wedding between Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle is going to be the 50th issue of this new Batman series from Tom King. So Batman issue 50 is where the wedding will take place. We know this from a solicitation that popped up in Diamond Previews that just came out for this month, for a solicited trade that has the issue in it. And it just seems like the 50th issue is probably a good way to do it. I mean, we're getting pretty close to that, so it seems like a good milestone issue. And we'll see what ramifications this might have. The solicitation for the trade talks about Mr. Freeze, so it seems as if Mr. Freeze will be a part of it. We know Joker is going to be a part of it. That is something that has been, kind of being set up for this kind of big thing. I guess Joker's a little jealous that that Batman's gonna, have another villain taking his focus away. I don't really know what's going on there. So it looks like the wedding will happen in issue 50. You can check out the covers. We did a little article on this over at entertainthegeeky.com. The covers that show, Catwoman standing in her wedding dress, and her reflection in the mirror is her Catwoman costume, and Batman standing in his tux, and obviously his reflection in the mirror is him in the Batsuit. So a couple of interesting covers be kind of a cool addition to your collection. So one last thing in the comic world, getting tweeted out from Marvel was a kind of teaser for what we can assume is a new Uncanny X-Men series. There have been kind of these little team books going on within the X-Men, but it seems about time for a relaunched Uncanny X-Men book, which we have not seen in a few years from Marvel. And that seems like what the case is. I mean, it's a brief little kind of picture that they put together. It just has a number 1 on it, and it's set in like the backdrop of the Danger Room. So what that could mean, who knows? I mean, maybe we could start to see similar with other, legacy titles and the fresh start things that are coming out of that. We could see a return to form for X-Men, where there's a school and students and training and these kinds of things. Be interesting to see. I mean, I've been enjoying the X-Men books that have been going on. I haven't really been reading Weapon X, but X-Men Blue, Gold, and Red have been fine books so far, and I like them. I like where they're going with the thing. We'll see if any of that kind of gets rolled into a new Uncanny X-Men book, but I imagine at least 1 or 2 of those series will continue on in their form. I mean, X-Men Red just started. And it's shaping up to be a very interesting story with some an addition of an old character that's popped up. So keeping with X-Men, but on the movie side of things, I've been as skeptical about X-Men movies before, or movies that have mutants in them in general. But it looks like it was announced this week that X-Men Dark Phoenix and New Mutants, which are 2 new 20th Century Fox X-Men stories, have been delayed. New Mutants had already been delayed once, but now it's going all the way back to August 2nd of 2019. And X-Men Dark Phoenix, which was supposed to be out this fall, is getting pushed back to February 14th, 2019. And X-Men Dark Phoenix, I think, kind of makes sense. They were talking about how some of the actors that are working on that, like Sophie Turner, her schedule is just full. She's filming the final season of Game of Thrones, and that's a huge thing, and everyone's, that contract takes precedence over a kind of a reshot thing. So getting her back for reshoots is going to have to wait, so they're going to push the movie back to accommodate that. But New Mutants, I mean, I remember the initial trailers for New Mutants, it looked like it was shaping up to be a really interesting story. But I just really don't know what happened. It got pushed back once for small reshoots, and now it's getting pushed back again for what they're calling extensive reshoots to introduce entire new characters into the narrative and rework the narrative entirely. It's, I guess, really just part of this, creative differences type thing that pops up in a lot of these higher profile comic films. Um, but the film's director has not had anything negative to say. He's completely on board still. Um, so who knows? I mean, introducing some new characters, based on the trailer that we saw, we already have a lot of new characters that we're getting introduced here for the first time within the story, kind of the 20th Century Fox X-Men universe story. And it seems kind of weird to want to jam some more characters in right at the last minute. It just makes me think that they felt like, that it didn't stand well enough on its own with the characters that they had already decided to use, and that maybe they wanted to add some more characters that were going to connect it to something else. Who knows? But regardless, if the sale of 20th Century Fox to Disney goes through, all of this might be a moot point. I mean, we'll probably see these franchises reach their conclusion with these films, even though New Mutants is just the start of their franchise. But who knows? I mean, maybe they might let them keep going. I guess it really just depends on the success of the films, whether or not a business kind of would want to keep going and kind of try to, milk a little more out of it, or incorporate them into their already existing larger franchise, which, fingers crossed, that's what I'm hoping for. um, um, and speaking of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we got some news from Doctor Strange. Obviously Doctor Strange is going to be featured probably quite heavily in the upcoming two Avengers films that will kind of bring 10 plus years of Marvel storytelling to a conclusion of sorts. It appears that we will, hopefully be seeing a Doctor Strange 2, as the creators from the first film have already started talking and working on ideas for the next one. And they have said that they would like to, use the villain Nightmare, which in the comic books, he's the ruler of the nightmare realm and the dream dimension. And he's kind of a recurring character within the Doctor Strange mythos. But the funny thing about it is, when Doctor Strange was initially being marketed to us, there was a lot of speculation about who Mads Mikkelsen's villain was, because at the beginning we weren't really for sure who he was playing. We just saw some makeup tests and this weird kind of cracked thing they had going on his skin around his eyes. So weren't really sure who he was going to play. And one of the biggest speculations, one of the ones that actually held a lot of water, was that he was going to be Nightmare. So it actually kind of, it turns out to be kind of a funny little thing that is where the creators, the director and the writers, were thinking of taking the character next. So again, it may seem kind of one note, but Doctor Strange protects Earth from the threats of other dimensional beings. So there's really not a lot to work with when it comes to Doctor Strange. I mean, putting him in the other movies with the Avengers and stuff, that's going to be amazing to see. But when it comes to telling stories on his own, those are the kind of stories you have to tell when you tell Doctor Strange, because that's who he is, that's what he does. And they've talked about the fact that they're, obviously going to try to evolve Mordo a little more, and we'll see kind of his arc play out maybe over the second and the third film, where the third film would be where he would take center stage as the villain. But interesting, and if we think about what the post, these next two Avengers films, Marvel Cinematic Universe is going to be, I'd imagine there's still room for Strange. I'd imagine there's, sequel potential for the Captain Marvel film that is yet to come out, another Ant-Man, obviously another Spider-Man or two, and another Guardians movie. So there's just plenty of room to expand. And honestly, I would assume that most of those movies will get sequels, if not trilogies, if there's continued success is anything to say about it. Back on the 20th Century Fox side, we did get a cool confirmation this week, and this is just kind of a quick little thing. But Louis Tan, who was actually the drunken boxer in Iron Fist, the Netflix Iron Fist show. And whether you loved it or hated it, I mean, that really kind of seems to be, there is no middle ground for that show. People liked it or they really disliked it. regardless, Louis Tan did bust out a really cool scene as a drunken boxer who gets in a fight with Danny at some kind of hand HQ in when they take their trip overseas, which was a really funny scene. And he's going to be in Deadpool 2. And we see him looking like very Shatterstar, but it's apparently been confirmed by him that he is playing Shatterstar. So that's all of the major players from that scene, except for Bill Skarsgård's character. And honestly, there's been wild speculation that he is Chamber. That seems to kind of fit with the weird look he has. But in the comics, Chamber had literally his whole face blown off for the first time he tried to use his bioblast power. And then he just went on not having the bottom half of his face anymore. So it'll be interesting. But Louis Tan has confirmed, yeah, he is playing Shatterstar. So they are going with a more classic kind of X-Force look and feel for the character, which I think is just great. I think his costume was always very cool. Obviously, me personally, I've never been a big fan of Rob Liefeld as an artist, but he gets a lot of the credit for the design of some of those characters. And, for me, my opinion, once some other creators took over, we got to see it really evolve. And that seems to be what is that and Rob Liefeld's original intention is what is inspiring this new look for the character in the movie. So one other quick thing in the movie side of things, there's, a weird kind of rumor and a kind of a growing petition about who should replace Carrie Fisher as Leia in Star Wars, and people had put Meryl Streep's name forth and were saying that she's the perfect person and that she should play the character. Apparently that we can put that to bed. They are not replacing Leia. The entirety of Episode 9 had to be rewritten. A lot of rewrites had to happen because they now needed to write Princess Leia out of the story, or General Leia out of the story. And honestly, I'm kind of happy with that. They've said they're not going to go the CG route. They're obviously saying to us right now that they have no intentions of recasting the character. So it will just be the end. We are now at the end. We lost Han, we lost Luke, and we lost Carrie Fisher, which means we lost Leia. I'm sure they'll write her out in an interesting way. Maybe kind of have it play within the story of the movie, but really kind of put the focus on Rey and Finn and Poe and Rose and Ben is probably where the movie will go. And so I'm kind of happy that that's the way they're going. I think it kind of there's a certain point where you go too far with a thing and you dishonor the original person who played the character. And don't get me wrong, I have been a supporter of CG. While it looked weird, I liked seeing Grand Moff Tarkin again in Rogue One. But I think it's a touchy issue, right? You don't want to dishonor the dead or try to replace their performance with another stand-in actor and a digital replacement of their face. So it looks like, Lucasfilm's taking the high road and they're just changing the movie to not include Leia after the events of The Last Jedi. Keeping with movies for real quick, this may or may not be true. It's kind of being implied, but Todd Phillips' Joker origin movie, there is a slight implication that it might be a prequel to The Dark Knight and kind of give us an idea about how this character came to be. And while I think that's cool, I really think the mystique of having a Joker like what Heath Ledger played, who had this kind of multiple choice answer when confronted about his past and when he was telling the story of his past. So I think that kind of takes something away from that movie. If this turns out to be true, I don't know that I'm completely on board with it. I do like the idea of Todd Phillips and Martin Scorsese doing an origin movie for the Joker. I know I've talked about that on the show before. But I don't really think they should sully the performance of Heath Ledger by trying to give it definition. I think it works well being mysterious, and that's really, why The Dark Knight was such a good, kind of well-received Batman movie by most fans, Marvel or DC alike. I mean, if you're a fan of movies, The Dark Knight is a great movie. Sticking with Joker, but we're going to cut down to the smaller screen. Gotham, the series, is supposed to reveal on this next episode who the Joker actually is. And it's long been thought and I think long been accepted. And I don't watch the show personally. I've just never really been a big fan of it, even though I am a fan of Batman. But I keep up and I read articles, reviews of the episodes and things because I like to keep up with the kind of news that I want to bring to you guys. So I guess it's long thought that Jerome is the Joker through the fact that he had his face removed, that he's just kind of maniacal and he has the voice and he has the look. But apparently that might not be the case. We might get a revelation here with this following episode that changes that whole belief. And honestly, I don't know how I feel about that. Just because it seemed like such a good thing. I mean, if what I'm understanding about the character is true, he seemed like a good fit for the character. It seems like it works. So if you're a fan of Gotham, you might be disappointed in this next episode. I'll keep up with it just to kind of bring you all the news on it as it happens, because I really think it's an interesting thing that they're doing this, kind of as a precursor to Batman, which never really made sense to me, which is probably why I don't enjoy the show or don't watch the show. Really just because I think you can't have these villains without Batman. That was the point, was Batman kind of escalated the situation and made crazy people put on costumes and be, crazy people. But whatever, love it or hate it, it is definitely stirred up fans. And again, if you're a fan, you might not be too happy with the fact that Jerome might not actually be the Joker. A couple of quick updates out of the video game world. Not much information on this at all, but apparently this summer we are getting a Lego Incredibles game, which I find just to be a fantastic idea. And I can't believe we haven't had them in a Lego game up to this point. It just seems silly to me. But so Lego Incredibles, again, no real information on what it's going to be, but there's kind of a little teaser, and it's supposed to be coming to us this summer. Pokemon Go got a huge update, which may or may not make you want to go play Pokemon Go again. Apparently they've added in a quest system to the game, which actually allows you to complete objectives, which are, as simple as catch 10 Pokemon, go spin 5 Pokestops, simple things that kind of can progress you through kind of like a story mode in the game, which I think is something that the game has been lacking, and it's why I think a lot of people who initially were so addicted to it kind of fell off and haven't been as addicted to it lately. But having quests and having kind of a narrative and allowing me to build toward catching a mythical Pokemon, which Mew has been added to the game as part of this update as well. So allowing these things to happen through like a story and a narrative and quests might be kind of fun, might give you a reason to get off the couch and go walk around and play Pokemon Go again. It's going to start to get nicer outside. It's a good time to do it. So one more thing real quick before I go. The Last Jedi has been released on Blu-ray. There's some special features that, I think are just great. Really kind of goes behind the scenes, allows you to see Rian Johnson's process and why he made some of the decisions he made, which I've supported since I saw the movie. Even for the first time, I've been a complete supporter of Rian Johnson. We did a review on this show, back when the movie came out. And I think, my feelings on it are clear. But a couple of cool little things that came out of the special features, just showing how dedicated Disney and Lucasfilm and the creators are to doing as much practical things as they can, kind of in reverence and in honor to the original storytelling. Revealed some interesting practical effects that you may or may not have actually thought were practical. You may have just kind of assumed CG was the way. So the first big one was, through the movie, obviously Rey and Ben Solo, they kind of have this connection. We don't initially know why. It's revealed later in the film. But there is a moment where Luke comes upon them and the connection is made physical and he sees Kylo Ren. And he kind of freaks out and he uses his powers and the whole hut around them kind of just explodes outward. And you may have thought, putting the actors in danger, you got to do that CG. There's no practical way to do that. Yeah, well, they did it practically. They basically slotted the pieces of this hut together like a puzzle, and the pieces of the hut were all made out of foam, right? So no danger to the actors. Could throw it right at your face, you'd be just fine. It's foam, and each piece of it was attached to a cable that all on cue kind of ripped it apart right around them. And I think that's fantastic. Practical effects blow my mind, and I love when you can do something like that and make it completely practical. The second real big thing was during the opening when the bomber drops the bombs. When we finally see that last desperate attempt by that final bomber to destroy the Dreadnought class destroyer, and the bombs are falling around the woman who is laying there. That is actually practical. Those are actually a real series of little orbs. She was laying in that set as those things were falling. So again, may have assumed it was CG. It wasn't. It was practical. And the final thing is the burning of the tree. So obviously Yoda is practical. He's the puppet again. That was a huge thing for all of us to see, especially as fans of the old Star Wars movies. But apparently the burning of the tree that once contained the Jedi texts was actually a real. They really built that tree set, and they set that whole thing on fire and burned it up for that scene. And I wonder, how many takes it took them where they had to rebuild it, or maybe had spares that they could use. But apparently they did actually burn the tree. The stunt double for Mark Hamill actually did kind of get blown back by the initial impact of the explosion. So just wild. I mean, things you would assume are just too dangerous or, expensive to do. They're doing it practically because they're really committed to keeping the spirit of Star Wars alive with practical creature effects, with practical ships, with practical sets. They really are just kind of committed to making it feel real. There is CG in there, obviously, don't get me wrong, but it kind of adds to the story. It doesn't take away from the story, which I think is what it did during the prequel trilogy. The CG just kind of took away from the storytelling. And you don't want that to distract from what your story should be. But that's going to bring us to the end. That was a lot. There was a huge amount of stuff going on to talk about, and I'm just gonna keep bringing the news to you. So if you do me a favor, if you like what we're putting down, go on over to entertainthegeeky.com. We've got both the shows there. We've got Chris and Roger's show, and we've got my show. All the episodes you can listen to. We've also got Matt and Jeff's show over there, Board Game Bros. They're brothers, and they design board games. They talk about board games. And we've also got the blog, the merchandise, all the stuff over there. You want to get our geeky faces on a t-shirt, you can do that. You want to get our logos on a t-shirt, you can do that. You want to put our logo on your cell phone case or your coffee mug or whatever, you can check that out right there on the website, entertainthegeeky.com. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/entertainmentgeeky. We are also on Twitter at entertaingeeky. And if you want to chat with me, just let me know what you think of the show, what you're digging, what you're not digging, what you'd like to hear more of, what you'd like to hear less of. I'm always looking for feedback from you guys out there. I want to hear it. You can shoot me an email at etgnerdnews@gmail.com. So I'm going to be with you guys again, in a couple of days. We're going to finish up. We're going to finish up our Road to Infinity War. Kind of look back at the different phases that me and Joe did. We're going to finish up that final episode, and we'll have that up in the next couple of days. Also, if you're a listener out there and you're local, Entertain the Geeky is going to be over at Miniature Market out off of Olive. We're going to be there on May the 19th. We're going to host a game day. We're going to teach you how to play some games. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. So check it out there. We'll have more details, as we get closer to the date. But just keep that in mind. Mark it on your calendar. We're going to have some fun. Until next time, guys, stay geeky.